to write something in the chat, like a plus, for me to see how many of us are still here. So plus or yes, or saying that you're back and you're ready for the discussion. Okay, we do have some people at least. Very well, thank you. So let me share with you what I would like to propose. But like I said, we can be flexible. So I'm going to share with you 2 questions on menti.com. And this is meant as a way to collect your ideas. And the first one is basically about your first response to what you've heard. Yeah, so you've heard, well, most of you, I think, have heard 3 approaches being shared with you. And I think that when we listen to something, even if it is difficult to decide to what extent it is relevant, because I appreciate that it can be very difficult when you just look at it. You need to have some time to really maybe look at it in more detail and reflect. But we do have some first response. And this is something I would like to now collect from you. So your first response to the assessment tools you've seen today, you can actually write what kind of response it is. You can mention to which tools it is related, or maybe it is related to all the tools as a kind of, semi-emotional, maybe semi-content-wise. And we do it via Menti, if possible. So for this, you need to either in another tab or on your phone, whichever is easier for you, just open the website menti.com and type the code, which you can see on the screen and which Renata also kindly copied to our chat. And I think that our answers should appear as you pose them. So I'll give you some time to think. Okay, very well, very well. So the answers are coming. Well, thank you very much for sharing. And I think it's also interesting and also useful feedback to us that our responses are different. And while some colleagues are finding it relevant and useful and take it and use it, someone else is finding it strange or something they've known before or not very relevant, which is probably the real picture, because we're a fairly large group with different ideas in different contexts. But the fact that the word interesting is bigger than other words means that a few people have answered like this, and the same refers to useful, and there are a few synonyms as well. That's probably some reassuring feedback to the authors. At the same time, I think it will be very interesting to listen to some maybe comment related to this response, especially maybe from those people who have very, well, I wouldn't call it radical, but very certain way. For example, if you find it very, very relevant or very, very irrelevant. So if you could say a couple of words why you think so, or what particularly you liked, found useful or relevant. So if some of you would like to say something, so please feel free to turn your mic on and share, and your camera on, or if it's impossible, just write in the chat. So just as a kind of commentary on what you've shared now on the slide. Whichever is more comfortable, writing, speaking. Anyone feeling like elaborating on any of the points? Well, I have a second slide while you are deciding, and that slide is more about the questions you might have. So, in other words, there are two things. So the first thing is a kind of response or a comment you're ready to share. And the second thing, maybe if it's easier for you to put it in the form of a question, which you would like to pose to any of the people you've heard, or just a more general question for us to reflect on, please feel free to do it, and then we can invite different speakers also to share what they think. Okay, we do have already a few comments in the chat. Okay, Stuart is writing, as a writer of the assessment tools, I found it generated a very productive way of going deeper into the research and making it applicable to classrooms. Okay, thank you, Stuart. I've attended classes regarding the new education model in Latvia, during which I've heard of these methods, as the main focus was creating a good and complete lesson. So I've heard of these before. Okay, thank you, Sabina. Can you maybe, if possible, for you to turn the mic on, just to elaborate a little bit? So you're referring more to the tools shared by Finnish colleagues, UK colleagues, Latvian colleagues, some specific tools, so that to the extent possible we can bring our conversation maybe to a more specific level. So because there were quite a few tools shared here. Yes, Renata, feel free to say something if you'd like to say. Okay, I see. Yes.
Okay, maybe then I can share just a brief impression. I've been interested in teaching thinking for some time, and what I appreciated about this project is that it actually aimed at developing practical tools, as we have seen in the last, for example, presentation of Stuart.
I'm sorry, Renata, can I ask you to turn your camera on, if it's possible, so that people can see you?
Yes. Just a second, please. Yeah, okay. So as I was saying, what I really appreciated about this project is that some projects are purely theoretical, some projects are very practical, and maybe if you try to dig deeper, you don't find a lot of theoretical underpinnings behind. But what I appreciated about this project is that every partner was trying to base it on some theoretical research, and maybe we did not agree on which approach we were using, but anyway, everyone had this approach. And then there was this piloting test. So basically, these are instruments that were tested and that can be practically used in the classroom. And that's what I really appreciated. I think that that's what we teachers, when we teach, we need. And since there is a choice of instruments, I think that everyone can select the instrument that corresponds to his views on teaching and learning or thinking. And this, I think, is a very strong point of the instruments that were presented.
Thank you, Renata. There is another comment in our chat about the tools being interesting but very time-consuming. Maybe if some of the colleagues involved in the process of development would like to take this comment and elaborate a little bit. So, colleagues, Irina, would you like to say a couple of words about the time-consuming nature of the tools?
Okay. Okay, so Alexander usually asks me to speak about that. As a practitioner, my advice here will be about, when we speak about this time-consuming, that start with bits, don't take a lot in the very beginning, start with bits and build on these gradually, just make it practice, make it a habit, and then it pays off. So even if you devote in your opinion, you give too much time to that, and there are more important things that you can develop, then with time, gradually, you will see that this really pays off. The earlier you start, the more time you have. That will be my comment.
Thank you. We do have some comments from the participants popping up regarding the questions colleagues would like to discuss. So if anyone would like to pick some of the questions and say a few words, Stuart, would you be interested in making a comment on any of the points on the slide?
Let's see. I'm going to pick activity monitoring. I'm assuming that activity monitoring is about the way that a teacher scans the classroom and that the teacher makes sense of what's happening in their classroom. For me, this was the strongest motivator for working in this area, because I would often be in a classroom and a moment would arise, and I'd think to myself as a practitioner, that's a very interesting moment, there's a real opportunity there. I believe that that moment is critical to the development of these children's thinking. And then the teacher would pass it. And later, when I'd be discussing with the teacher about the moment, perhaps drawing it to their mind by reminding them what children said, they would say something else. So, oh, that child was confused, so I thought I would repeat the ideas that I was sharing, or that child wanted to have that question, but it wasn't the time for that. That comes later. And I would always think, well, the moment when a child doesn't understand is a key moment in thinking, or the moment when a child raises a question is a key moment. Why are teachers passing past these? And so what we tried to develop with the assessment tools is opening up teachers' eyes to the possibility of what was happening in their classroom in respect of thinking. I mean, the teacher who ignored those two triggers of a question or a misunderstanding was clearly doing for very valid reasons, perhaps time, or perhaps a real clear understanding about problems that have arisen from that in the past. But to me, it always seemed to be a missed opportunity. And so I wanted tools that would allow teachers to open their eyes to these things.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Before I pick something up, unless someone else wants, can I invite maybe some of the authors to elaborate a little bit so that we understand what exactly is meant? When you're referring to cons, for example, are these cons related to the tools we've been developing, the implementation of the tools, the collaboration in the project? So provide a little bit more context so that we know in which direction you'd like us to take this. And the same about experience from practice. Are you related to the experience of developing tools, experience of teachers using the tools, or what we what we've heard from teachers. So just to guide us a little bit in the answers to make it more relevant to what the authors wanted to hear. There is a very specific now question about the UK. Would you like to answer, Stuart?
Yeah. So in the presentation that I gave earlier, we looked at 3 areas. So the classroom climate, the nature of the dialogue that children were undertaking, and then the children's progression in reasoning. So I guess that this question refers to the progress that children make in terms of reasoning. In order to keep the tools relatively generic and applicable to different subjects, we chose 2 methodologies. We looked at the developmental stages of Piaget, and we looked at solo taxonomy. With 2 tools that have been developed in that area, and they look at both maths, science, and English. To have an assessment tool that's very specific to a particular subject would mean that they wouldn't be as applicable to other areas. Measurements of children's development in reasoning are also, for me at least, more problematic generally. They're problematic because the development and the ability to reason is a slower process than perhaps occurs in a single lesson. But the fundamental changes that happen into children's minds are in terms of a month or months rather than in terms of an hour or minutes. What we found with looking at climate and dialogue is that they provide the precursors to those fundamental changes in the mind that we're after, and that without the right climate or the right type of dialogue, those changes are less likely to take place. So we have many tools for climate and dialogue, and only 2 tools for changes in a child's reasoning. I'm not sure who was the author of that question, but I hope that helps in some way.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. I don't know, I can try to pick the one about differences between the 3 countries and commonalities. If I start with commonality, then I think that we all agreed that we develop tools for those teachers who are interested and accept the idea of developing thinking skills. So we're not trying to develop something for everyone. So this was the assumption. We also all agreed that this is just part of the assessment package the teacher needs. So it's not instead of, it's in addition to. The differences, well, I would refer to 2 major differences in my opinion. So the first is that we all exist in a certain context, and the context in Finland, UK, and Latvia is not the same. And of course, inevitably, when we develop something, we develop it for the context which we know best and in which we operate. So these were the differences, and they different contexts affected, of course, differences in the tools we've been developing. Another difference is connected to the actual underlying approach or beliefs the developers keep to. And we try to share them. I think that all the presenters. So in the Latvian team, so our understanding of thinking stems from the theory of inventive problem solving, and all of us have been working in the thinking approach tradition, and this obviously guides how the tools look like. In the UK, the developers come from the Let Think tradition, which again has certain theoretical underpinnings, and the tools, although not directly related necessarily to Let Think approach, they are wider. They refer to specific, usually approaches which were initially developed in the UK. In Finland, they try to position their tools in the context of the new Finnish curriculum, and the underlying philosophy is revised Bloom's taxonomy, in fact, and Julie spoke about it. Yeah, Stuart is adding something. Stuart, if you feel like adding something by saying it, please feel free.
No, I'm okay. And I've just realised that what has become a very private environment in the past with doing Zoom calls and speaking to friends, now is rather public, isn't it? So perhaps I shouldn't be having a cup of tea and eating my biscuit.
Okay, so we still have some 10 minutes. I don't see that the authors of previous comments have elaborated. So shall we just try to guess what people meant and try to make some comments? So when people refer to peculiarities of implementation and some examples of experience from practice,
can I make some speculation and maybe just answer?
Of course, Irina, yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. So my speculation is that the people who have written this, both experience from practice and peculiarities of implementation and examples, are speaking about having some examples, some I don't know, practice, so that they can see how it practically works. But I think that we spoke about that all the illustrations about which Stuart spoke and all the materials and tools which we were speaking about, they are available, freely available, and you can go to the sites of both Let's Think and Thinking Approach, and you will find there a lot of examples of lessons, tasks, activities, tools, whatever. That is, if I have understood the questions correctly. That would be my answer. If it is something different, then yes, I agree with Alexander, then could you please specify?
Yeah, thank you, Irina. We do have some comments on the time, and I think that we have to accept as teachers that time is always a concern, and it's very difficult to find the teacher who says that they have more time available than they would like to have. So if we accept it as a given that we don't have enough time, so maybe it will make it easier then for us to decide how we look at these kind of things. And I think that some of the assessment tools you've been introduced to today, they can be used far wider than just for assessment purposes. And as long as we see how these tools are not only for assessment, but for many other things, including learning, primarily for the learners we are working with, our own professional development, then maybe we see things from a little bit different angle, just as a possible lens for you to think about. Peculiarities of implementation, I don't know. We can probably say a couple of things about the Latvian experience, how we've been implementing the tools here. And unfortunately, in the English section, we didn't have a chance to offer more workshops. So we had quite a few today in the morning in the Latvian track of the conference. And I think that what some of the colleagues emphasized is the difference. By colleagues, I mean teachers who were at some point also introduced to the tools because they did not participate in their development. They were introduced to the tools, and their first response was, well, how relevant can it be to me, especially if I teach the subject where talking is not that widely positively looked at, like, for example, mathematics. And but what they noticed after some time, that when they started using the tool, they started moving from the situation where nobody in class ever had a question about anything to the situation that many learners actually started coming up with questions about the new things they're dealing with. And they found it useful. And if I'm trying to connect it to the topic of time, then when there is a question coming from learners, that actually accelerates the learning process, and we can actually pick something additional what we might have lost earlier on when we spent more time introducing the tool. As a kind of comment, and there are some more things Stuart is writing. And yes, anyone who feels like saying something, so that we are not only the written culture but also the oral culture. Yes, I think these personal aspects which colleagues are writing about in the chat have also been extremely positive for us if we reflect on the partnership. And we discussed it also all together, and we discussed it specifically in the Latvian team, what we've learned from us being the partnership. So what we learned, where we changed our views. And this was important, and the personal thing, when you meet people and the people you enjoy spending time with and communicating, that's also very, very important. Okay, any new comments? So let me go back to responses, see what we have. This is our picture with responses. So now, after 19 people have responded. So the time for the last questions or comments, if we have any, so please either write them or speak up. I'm now trying to look at our chat and check the situation with our last speaker. And the major difficulty with our last speaker, the major problem in England, as we know, is the power storm. I think a question with our last speaker is a very different time zone because he comes from Canada. So I wonder if everything is fine and if Mo is with us. I don't really see him on the list of participants at the moment. Let's wait a few minutes while we are waiting, and hopefully Dr. Mo will appear. And there is a question, yes, I probably can answer before I move on. Yes, I can say a couple of things, and Stuart, you can add. So I think that in all of us have tried to develop some illustrations. For example, if you look at the Latvian tools, you'll see how we applied some of the tools in the context of the foreign language. And even if examples are not from Italian, but from another foreign language, I think you can easily try to make transfer. And I think in the same way, depending probably on which age group or level group you teach, you might look at some other things. What I also recommend, tomorrow there will be presentations related to the use of some of the approaches which are behind the tools. And perhaps it will be easier to see how the tools can be used when you learn a little bit more about the approaches behind the tools, because some of the dots may become more connected. So I do invite you to join tomorrow and see what colleagues are presenting. There will be presentations from different approaches related to languages. Okay. So about tomorrow, we have one last minute change for tomorrow, because unfortunately one of the speakers has just informed us that he's not going to make it tomorrow. So not to make things very misleading, so I'll just announce it to you here, and then we'll simply make an announcement in the room where you come tomorrow. But tomorrow morning, for the first 30 minutes, we'll all meet in one room. Yes, in the room which is called room 1 in your program. Don't worry, even if you happen to be coming to room 2, there will be a link in room 2 to room 1. And we'll start with a presentation, which will be a joint presentation for everyone. And then we'll divide into 2 groups and we'll have parallel tracks. So that was a fast decision to make things easy and faster, but we are meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow Latvian time. Please check which time zone it is wherever you are. So, Dr. Moore, let me check if you are here. So, if you are here, please signal that you are here and you're ready to take the floor. Yes, please, Anna Marie, if you feel like making a comment, yes, do turn your mic on and do feel like sharing your question or comment. Okay, then I think what I'm going to do, I'm going first of all to thank all the speakers and to thank all the participants today. I know it's been a very long day, at least for some of you, and thank you very much for finding the time to be here till the very end. I do understand that sometimes, the ideas and the questions might appear later. So if you feel like there are some things which you would like to ask, but you thought about it later, do share, do come tomorrow. We always have our chat room, and feel free to say that this is something you've been thinking about, and that's what you would like to ask. And I think that all of us, all of the partners, the UK partner, the Finnish partners, and the Latvian partners, are open to collaboration. So if you feel that you looked at the tools, you would like to learn more, you want to participate maybe in a professional development event, do contact people, and I'm sure there are plenty of opportunities to learn more from the experience of each of the teams. And as I said earlier, we are going to have more talks tomorrow, not maybe directly related to the tools, but related to the approaches. So that's another way to share our ideas and maybe learn more. Okay, unfortunately, it looks like our last presenter, due to some reason, didn't manage to join us. So I apologize for this. And I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And enjoy your evening, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you.
About the recording, yeah, there is a question. All the recordings of the conference will be made available via TA Teachers EU website. For you to be able to see the recordings, we've asked all of you to register on the website. So, and after you register, we'll authorize you. And if we've already authorized you, for example, if you registered yesterday, by now you will have been authorized. Try to log into the website using the credentials you've selected, and you will see the program with links to sessions. If you can see the program with links to sessions, it means you will be able to see the recordings the moment they appear there. But again, you have to log in. So the recordings will not be publicly available. So please register if you haven't done it yet on the website, not register for the conference. And we send the links, I think, in the emails which we've sent to all the participants, and we will send it again tomorrow, just to remind if you didn't succeed. But yes, the recordings will be available for all the tracks.